Hello, and welcome to episode number 14 of Fast Casual, Landa's official podcast, brought to you live today, Wednesday, October 11, from both San Francisco and New York City. No longer Ireland, everybody. My name is Alex Mann, and I'm your host again, and it's great to be back on US soil. As I like to say, every restaurant has a story, and so without further delay, let's get this show on the road. I'm delighted to say that we have our CEO, Vivian Wang, here again today. She's always here, obviously. Vivian, say hi.
Hello. Good to be here with Dave today.
Who'll be here chatting with Dave Liu, co-founder and president of Expo, AI for restaurant operations, based here in San Francisco. The man has quite a background. Dave, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. And Vivian, starting with you like we always do, do you want to give us a quick intro to remind people who you are, what you do, etc.?
Absolutely. So we help restaurants with hiring team members up to managers. Labor is the number one challenge a lot of restaurants face. So we work with a bunch of QSRs, full service brands across the US to help them get staffed.
Awesome. And Dave, next up, give us an introduction to, I was having a little perusal of your LinkedIn before we got started, pretty peppered with achievements and great roles. Do you want to give us an insight into your background there?
Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Alex. So I'm out here in San Francisco. I've been out here almost 25 years, been in tech, working at big tech from Yahoo to eBay to Cisco, and then started a few companies since then. But I've been in the Valley for many years and seen a lot of technology come and go. Working on a company called Expo right now, helping restaurant operations basically make more money by saving them time and doing analysis using AI of their data. And giving them actionable insights.
Okay, awesome, man. Awesome. I mean, that's so cool. And I think, we caught up last week, and I thought it's really cool that we align, like both Landed and Expo on like this. Probably the biggest hot button topic in the space now is like AI, artificial intelligence. And I love that there was a quote you made last week we were on the phone, like AI in hospitality itself, there's kind of this kind of smoke and mirrors, like people are unsure what it means, what it does, what value it brings. And I guess that's as good a jumping off point as any that we can have. It's like, what do you mean by that? And we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a lot of AI in general, a lot of people who kind of aren't in and around tech, they just hear the buzzwords of AI and generative AI and all the things out there from, apps changing your picture into some, superhero and modifying or writing songs for you and doing all sorts of different things. But I think it's trying to think about the practical uses of AI as it relates to restaurant operators. We met a lot of restaurant operators who, we work with Burger King, Popeyes, and other restaurant operators, and some of them don't really understand how it's going to help them. There's a lot of noise and technology about, automation will be robots and, delivery machines and like all sorts of things that are very future techy. But as it relates to current day operations and, what they do, it's like, how does it help my life? How does it apply? That's what they want to know. They were just like, I don't understand how AI is going to actually improve my business and help me and my operations. And so, I think there's a lot of different angles that we see AI. A lot of people talk, I think Permanente Brothers and others have been using AI for, customer service and ordering and things like that, and customer facing software. But when it comes to internally and the operations of running the day-to-day of a restaurant, with Landed and with Expo, it's like, how can AI actually help me with my business as I run it and each of my locations as I'm literally, so bogged down with data and dealing with customers and hiring and, just making sure I get the orders so I get my sales. I mean, it's just constant kind of a deluge of information. And so what we are doing is using AI to actually distill all of that data for you and tell your managers at the stores exactly what they need to focus on, what they need to do. It's basically, we can run a health check using AI and say, hey, these are the problems that you're having right now. For loss, one of your employees probably stealing or they're discounting too much for you and you need to talk to them. Or this employee, like, you can increase your sales because upsizing relative to other stores in your peer group and other stores in your system usually upsize their or do attachment rates for cheese or bacon at this rate. And so you should be too. So maybe you should coach your employees. So it identifies all the opportunities and tells you like what you can do. But usually that takes humans and brain power and analysts and data scientists to go through, and no one's going to have time to go through every single store and identify all the issues that each store has. But using AI, you save time, and it's not. There's a scary, impression that AI is going to take over the world and take over your jobs, and Terminator, Skynet destroy everything. But the way the way we're seeing AI is that it's actually helping you do things that you don't need, like you don't have time to do. So you're using all your brain power to go through Excel spreadsheets and having like paying someone to do that, or analyzing all the data, creating heat maps, doing whatever. But that takes 3-4 weeks to do, and then it's all your data is you're being reactive to all the data. It's like stuff already happened. You already missed out, and you could have done something even. Whereas now AI in real time, every single day you give it data, it can tell you what you need to do, and then you can be proactive about fixing things. So it's very much how does one benefit from having extra brain power and bandwidth, like some really smart assistant manager to help your managers do their job better.
Totally. Yeah. So I actually saw a stat recently that 54% of organizations are using AI to some degree in IT, business, network processes, and they have seen cost savings and efficiencies from AI. So AI, I mean, that kind of like speaks to like the big part of like driving these efficiencies. But like to step back, I mean, you brought up Terminator. I think like that's kind of how people think about AI. Like, I've heard all these different terminologies of AI, right? There's like AI alone, there's generative AI, there's conversational AI, there's all these different types of AI. Like, can you speak to like the differences in when someone says AI, like what do they actually mean by that? Like, what are the different types that people can consider?
Yeah. So I think if a lot of the people out there have seen some of the generative AI output, and it's kind of like, oh wow, people are writing full stories based on other writers, and you can create a new novel for Harry Potter just by telling it, I want something written like in the style of J.K. Rowling for its 8th book of Harry Potter. And then others are seeing art that's being created, or music videos or songs being written in the style of, Drake or whatnot. You can actually let it basically take the data that you have and extrapolate and create more data. So that's generative AI. Then there's conversational AI. It's like, oh, ChatGPT, things that people talk about are, I don't want to search on Google, like, how do I fix my my carburetor, or how do I fix my like broken sink. And some people go on YouTube, look for a bunch of people to who can help them on YouTube, or you can ask ChatGPT, and it scours the internet for all the information out there, and it distills it down to a few paragraphs and steps. It tells you exactly what you need to do. So the same way we have a conversational AI piece on our platform of Expo is, if you don't have an access to your financial analyst or data scientist or someone to ask, hey, what were my sales for the sales trend for the last 12 months in my Fort Worth store in Texas? Or what is the highest COG store right now, of last week, this and that. So if you don't have someone doing SQL queries, Excel spreadsheets, doing the, exporting from the different tools, you have to spend and pay someone for their time to actually do that for you. Whereas we can get that data for you instantly. It's like, so rather than having like humans to do the stuff that, maybe they don't want to do, like a lot of people who worked in restaurants didn't get hired to do data analysis. They're there to help customers. So there's a lot of turnover because they're stuck there dealing with hiring. I'm basically a staffing manager, or I'm basically like, I'm trying to identify problems, but customers are like, I need to help customers. So this basically takes all that information, does it for them, and then automates it. So that's the biggest thing. I think the automation part of it, the piece of it where you would otherwise have to have a human do a lot of this work, find recruits, go on Indeed and post like all these things, or figure out, hey, why what part of my inventory, why are we spending so much money on ketchup compared to our other stores who have the same sales rate? Oh, look, our people who work here keep putting 2 packets of ketchup in every bag that goes, and so we're burning, like, wasting money on inventory. So those things can be identified when you take all the data, compare across stores, what the right sales per labor hour is, what the right number of orders per sales is, like that you spend on chicken or burger patties or whatnot, and then you can tell a store, hey, stop like wasting burger patties. You don't have to, like, there's something wrong here, and look at it. Oh, we found our team was throwing out a bunch of stuff. So I think it's more to tell a story by just like finding the data and identifying opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, AI now is so powerful. I mean, in the past couple months, it's like made a ton of progress. I think sometimes when we talk to restaurant brands, they're like, well, we've tried AI in the past and it didn't make as big of an impact as we thought. And then when you discover what they thought was AI was actually just like a chat bot, that they had to pre-code or things like that. So I think the big thing to call out is that AI can actually has essentially a brain that can take information and distill it probably quicker because it has the learning of the entire internet and everybody else that is like constantly feeding information into the internet versus like hiring a person who might have a wealth of experience, but will have to spin up and ramp up on like your operations and frankly, like probably doesn't have the bandwidth to keep up to date with all the real-time information that's happening because your operators also like want to be focusing on guest experience and team and probably the food, probably less so like you said, data analysis, things like that. There's another interesting stat, which is that in QSR in the past 2 quarters, 68% turnover of general managers. So really high turnover percentage. I mean, if you're having turnover, basically vast majority of your general managers, which are the lifeblood of your business on the ground, like serving as your front line to the guest, there's no way you're going to have continuity in your business. So when you're thinking about like using AI for operations, right? And, we think about using AI for hiring. What are like, one of the things is like onboarding, right? So people are wondering about, okay, how do we actually adopt this? Because though I think everyone has heard about AI, only actually 14% of US adults have ever actually engaged with ChatGPT. It's a very low percentage, but of that percentage, like majority of them tend to be the people between the ages of 18 to 35. And it just so happens that 70% of hourly workers nowadays are Gen Z. So you have this new kind of crop of people who are going to be actually on the ground, like utilizing this technology, but you also have like, the tried and true, the seasoned operators who've been doing it for decades, who kind of have their own way of doing it. How do you kind of reconcile that in onboarding new technologies like AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is new. It's scary. A lot of people aren't familiar how to deal with it. I think the way that we introduce it is it's very much about design and how you kind of build it into a product, and you don't make it too complicated. You make it very simple, and just like for us, we have canned questions that we can start with that people can ask, and you just click on it, and it'll kind of train you to what kind of questions to ask. We have our operators use it. We have managers using it every single day because they know kind of a routine of things they want to check up on or things they want to ask. But also, there are subtle ways that you can present things like, whether it be a predictive forecasting or whatnot in ways that they are used to seeing it. So if they're looking at a chart on our platform for kind of sales per labor hour, we give them a chart, but then we also above it recommend, hey, by the way, did you know that at these hours you're overstaffed and you could probably cut back on labor and save some money there? And this is how much you could be saving, like $10,000 a month, because if you pull back those hours in check with what your peers do, you will be able to save X amount of money. So I think it's more of a, how do you give them practical information that they would have wanted to get themselves, but you think 2 steps or 3 steps ahead. So they would have had to go hunt that down themselves, but you're like, oh wow, you just made my day because you told me exactly how much I could save and how many hours cut back. Or it's like, oh, delivery sales are problematic right now because your accuracy rate is falling behind, and Tuesdays are a worst day, and these 2 employees are actually usually responsible for a lot of these problems. So it's like, oh, you saved me time from trying to hunt down and figure out what I need to do. Now I know my Thursday schedule is problematic. I need to put someone else who knows what they're doing on Thursdays. These 2 employees need to be retrained, and I need to figure out how to improve my accuracy for those days, and it'll increase retention and improvement in sales. So I think a lot of that leads to the question that you asked about turnover, is when a general manager can just focus and be told exactly what they need to focus on. If I get a health check from my doctor and if I don't have a health check from my doctor, I'm trying to fix everything. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm going to go and look at every part of me that needs to be fixed. But if I go to the health check, it's like, oh, your blood sugar is high, focus on that. Oh, okay, I can fix that in my diet, or my cholesterol is high, focus on that. But if you are literally running around like a chicken with your head cut off and don't know what to fix, you're going to try to fix everything, and that will burn you out very quickly. Whereas with our AI, we tell you, hey, this is your cholesterol, this is your like blood pressure, go fix these two things, and everything will work itself out. So I think we have customers who tell us the regional directors and the district managers are basically being helped by this because there's accountability for their managers, because they know that the area director is seeing the same data that they're seeing and it's telling them what to do. And then they also know their peers, the other general managers are being ranked against them. And so there's a lot of transparency. And I think that helps a lot, because then you realize, oh, I'm not just accountable to my manager. I'm accountable to like my peers and the execs who are seeing my performance. And it literally is telling me my turnover is out of control. I need to fix that. My hourly turnover is a problem, so I need to fix that and address that. So I think that transparency of data really helps, but I think it's about telling them what's the checklist of things you need to do, because before they're like on their own, they have to figure that out themselves. And now AI can help them identify what to do.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, to your point, right? It's not like there are a lot of like employees that you have on the ground who are thinking about a lot of problems. And so maybe like some of those things that you were mentioning, that's like the general manager. Maybe it's the district manager. Maybe it's the regional. Maybe it's even some of those, in some cases, like the assistant manager is like thinking through these. I think what we found in companies that have done a really good job rolling out, not just AI, but new technologies, AI is just one that AI is kind of like being able to hire headcount without the costs associated with hiring headcount. So
Yeah.
How I think like kind of putting on like the headcount, like onboarding framework to AI is a very beneficial one. So when you're going to bring on a new person to your team, what are you going to have them do? Well, you're going to make sure that they get partnered with a like key point of contact in the restaurant to like actually onboard them and train them on everything that they actually need to know, and what like their focus is, their priorities. And then there needs to be someone in the restaurant or in the company that's held accountable to that person's success. So like the person's success when you are bringing on a new server, well, that's the front of house general manager's like responsibility. When you are bringing on a new general manager, well, that's the responsibility of the district manager or the regional manager to make sure that they are successful. So depending on like the value that you're bringing AI on to, like whether it's like with Expo and bringing on like operational efficiencies, well, probably the district manager and the general manager need to be in trainings. They need to know exactly like what types of questions like they're looking to ask and how this technology is going to service them. On our side, we look at hiring, right? And we have multiple stakeholders. We have the general manager who actually conducts the interviews, who need to be on board and up to speed, because we kind of act like a recruiter for them ultimately. But then also with the HQ team, who needs to know like overall how's it going, how's like staffing levels going, but they need to see things from a much more aggregated like light. So I think like for those who, for if your company is like, if your brand is like thinking about adopting AI, like you already are experts at onboarding new people, given the restaurant industry has 130% turnover in the hourly level, and 68% turnover in the general manager level. You necessarily have to be good at onboarding new people, and you can take that exact same framework in onboarding like an AI.
Yeah, no, I think most people don't realize that the AI learns from what you already have and the things that you already do, and it continues to build on that. So it's kind of like if you have 30 restaurants, that data that you have is like a brain. Like you have all this data, memory, and other stuff for that brain, and the AI applies that to learn from that. So it's kind of, I think, when you have, hopefully, with the onboarding, these things will help those people onboard easier, because it's kind of like an assistant coach, kind of to help you get things going. And we found that we haven't had to have any training. Like we don't, all of our users, they if you make it intuitive enough and designed, like for Landed, it's like literally you never see it. It's plugged in and it's easy, and there's no extra software you have to learn. For us, we designed it to be very intuitive, and the stuff we've seen out there, I mean, these companies have been around for like 20, 30 years. They're using software that is just not intuitive. It's slow. The databases take forever to load. They're sitting there. We've literally seen operators who load pages and sit there for like 30 seconds watching a spinner go while it's trying to get the data. I mean, we're on modern cloud software, so it's instant for them. And it's like literally 1 second. I want to see all my 300 store sales ranked by, ABT, and it's like, okay, bang, like instantly. And so I think that in itself is time saved because we're just faster and more modern than a lot of the stuff that a lot of companies are bogged down with old software and their stack is just so complicated and convoluted. And so the fact that you make it seamless, like Landed just pumps in new candidates without having to do anything, like that's how it should be. It should be kind of intuitive, seamless, easy to use because most of the operators we talk to, they don't want to add another, login to their mix. It's like overwhelming already. So if we're the last login they ever use, that's what we want to be. We want to be like the all for one, like all in one package that they come to every day, and the rest of it is just kind of in the background.
I have a more like forward-looking question to ask. So actually 69% of executives believe that AI will lead to the emergence of potentially new job roles. So, and this I think is kind of like tied to the data piece because like you brought up, okay, there's so much data. Now, what do you actually do about the data? Because like once you know, then how do you like know what to eat? Like maybe you don't know that eggs have high cholesterol, maybe you don't know that like red meat does. So when we're looking at the data and potentially all these executives who think that there's going to be the emergence of new roles, like what are you predicting in terms of who is using this data, how are they using it, what cadence, or is it like potentially like new roles, like when we're kind of like looking at this like crystal ball, like what does the future hold for this?
It's funny because I mean we've seen that this our data essentially is an artificial manager that can make decisions. So if we get to the point where we are generating, and we're already doing some of this, like forecasting, scheduling for orders of how many buns you need to order for the next few months, or what's headcount or scheduling. The next step of AI is going to be taking that and actually, my turnover rate is this. I'm going to have 3 openings next month in my on Tuesday and Wednesday. I need to automatically tell like Landed to schedule, like put up opening job for this, fill this out, interview them, and get this done. But it's almost like the profile of a general manager to leverage all this will be different because they're going to be optimizing different things. So for us, it's even, we take a look at your sales and menu mix, and then like we know what items to order for inventory. We can purchase, like order the refills of purchases. But it also could be, hey, we see the feedback from guests. We also analyze guest feedback, and we say, based on guest feedback and sales trends, maybe there's a new menu item we could probably create that would be optimized for sales. And then you look at pricing, and you can optimize for pricing too. So a lot of the stuff, I'd say the type of person who is going to be looking at all these things might be very different than the ones we're seeing now. And there'll be hopefully less turnover because you have, more kind of firepower from the AI helping people do their job and then focusing on other more important things.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that like, looking back at that 68% turnover number for GMs, like, how do we make the job like also more fulfilling? I know that, for example, Taco Bell, they toyed around with like $100K salary for GMs. And I mean, if your box is doing, 4 to 5 million, that's, of course, it could withstand that. It can sustain that too. Also, if your GM is doing a lot of like extremely like high leverage work. So I think that like the key here is like, how do we with the way that I think about it is like, if I look forward, I look at like the talent side, the people side, because obviously we're in the hospitality business, like people are like the most important part of the business. And like, the fulfillment that they get in their role. I see like so often that people are just like doing like menial tasks, like very menial tasks, like literally doing the same exact thing, like
trash.
50 times in a day. And like no human being is going to want to do that for like an extended period of time. But like a lot of these folks, like if they had more bandwidth to actually like execute on these suggestions that Expo gives them,
Yeah.
or actually spend time with a team or spend more time with the guest. I think in technology world, we talk a lot about like spending time with a user, spending time with guests to like really understand what they're looking for. If you had more of that, then potentially you could be leveling up like the caliber of your team, especially like your management team over time. And I hear a lot that like, oh, you know, there are a lot of people who are leaving the industry and like going to other like remote work or gig work where they have more flexibility. So I think it's the onus is on the industry to think about, okay, like let's actually like look at the job of a manager now. Okay, we're spinning up ghost kitchens. We're spinning up virtual brands. We have all these hygiene practices that are going to be with us forever because, you know, we went through a pandemic. We have like a lot more data and like everybody has to be a lot more like consumer focused. So you have loyalty programs, you have LTOs that you have to roll out because we're looking at like holiday season coming up. So all those types of things are now like mushed into like one role, which is the general manager.
Yeah.
And like, how can you like actually take that role and like make them a lot more high leverage? Well, you're going to have like a human being, like their brain would just explode. They can't do all that. Like what we just described is like probably like 5 different roles. But if you can't have budget to hire another 4 people to do those 5 roles, well, you can use AI a lot, like, you know, it's a lot lower cost and you can still get the efficiency out of it.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's all about AI is not replacing people. It's complementing them, like, so that they can do the things that you might not want to do, or it takes too much, bandwidth for you to do, and you can focus on the important things. I think that's the most important thing people have to realize for AI. Even for writing or art, it's like you still have to give them prompts to guide the art and the writing. The same way as this, we can give you the tips on what to do, but you have to actually go and execute this and figure out like how to solve these problems. So I think it becomes a much more of a kind of a guided, experience where you actually can go focus and get things done. Because it might not feel very rewarding if you are scrambling and trying to figure out, put out fires constantly, because you can't actually grow that way. And I've seen many brands unable to grow just because, they're building new, like really hot brands, but they can't literally open a 5th location because they're putting out fires at their current 4. But it's like, oh, well, if AI can help you manage those 4 more efficiently and streamline that, then you can spend your money and time focused on opening that 5th location and finding that 5th location. So, my co-founder, he, graduated from Stanford and was supposed to be a doctor, and then he went to go be a cook at in New York at Per Se. It was his first job, and he started a restaurant, chain in San Francisco after working for Thomas Keller, and he literally didn't want to, like, this is perfect for Landon, but he realized he was running 3 restaurants, and he was filling in shifts for people who didn't show up to work or were like quit the job or they were fired or whatever happened. And it's like, I thought I was starting a restaurant chain, but I'm really just starting a staffing agency. Like, I have to find people all the time. That's the full-time job. And so he couldn't focus on opening more locations, which is what he wanted to do, and building his brand and building his business, because he was bogged down with not only the stuff that like Expo is doing that he had to do too, but he also physically couldn't because he was making sandwiches at one of his stores because someone just called out sick or quit that day. So I think, that being said, it's like a lot of operators who were listening to this, they have gone through a ton and they're just constantly bogged down by fires. And so our goal is, hey, if we can help you streamline solving some of these problems, then you can focus on what's important and grow your business more.
Yeah, and I see some of the questions like in the chat, and a lot of the like some of them, I mean, you can answer them, of course, because they're about Expo and AI. But I mean, it sounds like it wouldn't, like Expo wouldn't create more work for the IT team. It sounds like it's pretty much like a straightforward implementation, and really it's just like having an assistant for your operators.
Yeah, no. So this is, I mean, I think a lot of people wonder, like, oh, we're going to add another software. We're agnostic. Like, we've worked with folks like Wingstop who have CSV files, and Jack in the Box who have, really hard, and we basically sit on top of any data. We don't care what you're using. We take your accounting data, scheduling software, your DoorDash data, your, punch cards, your POS data. It doesn't matter which POS you're on. We are agnostic to all these things, and we layer on top of that. So the AI and the dashboards that we build specifically for restaurants. And I want to be clear that a lot of AI out there is generic. I mean, there's a whole thing about LLMs and learning from certain kind of brains that is confusing. But
yes,
the future of AI is about verticalized solutions. And so for us, we are the AI for restaurants, because we only work with restaurants. We gather the data from restaurants and we build charts and dashboards and AI to answer questions for restaurant operators. And so that's very important to clarify, because if you go to ChatGPT and you ask, how do I increase sales for my burritos, they don't have no idea. But we literally sit on your data and we create a data warehouse for you of all your data, and then we sit on top of that. So we do all that work for you, and then it doesn't matter what POS. You could literally switch POSs and you would never know, because on Expo just stays the same. So it's like a constant across everything. And so there is not much trouble. Like, it takes a few weeks to integrate, and we just get it running. But yeah, it's in terms of, I see another question about scheduling, but yeah, this is what the AI does. It tells you like when you should be scheduling, like for how many hours, how many people for certain hours, because we look at all your stores, we see what the benchmarks are, and we compare that, and then we generate like recommendations on how much this store should be scheduling. So again, the AI sits on top of all that data and then gives you answers and suggestion solutions.
Yeah, I think to your point about like LLMs and like language learning models, like these, like there's a lot of like general AI out there, and like, because some people on the call might be like,
yeah,
can I build my own landed? Can I build my own Expo? Like, just if I hire an engineer. Well, the thing is that like where you actually get a lot of value is in AI is like exactly the data that you give it to train. It's like, what classes do you have it take? Like, what information are you giving it to like understand like what to actually do? And if you train a person on how to like maybe optimize operations in a warehouse, and also a retail store and a large stadium, all those things might actually come in conflict with how it actually should be running in like a restaurant. So I think verticalized, when companies are looking at like what to bring on, like working with verticalized like solutions is important, because like verticalization doesn't mean anything other than like the information that's like being used to make the product better is specifically in your industry. Like it's specifically other restaurants, like, learnings from that. It's not like taking the whole world of possibilities. Cause like, even if like, running something in the US might be very different than running things in Europe too. So like verticalized solutions, like, when you're looking at solutions, like making sure that you're looking at ones that service your specific industry means that like all the features going to be built for like for your industry too.
Yeah. And that's huge though, because that usability, if we were designed for auto shops and restaurants and like a clothing store, that experience would be very different for different people. And if you made a generic one for all three, you're probably not gonna like be the best for any of the three. Like, all things, all people is not great, especially for this situation. And I think one thing that might be intimidating for a lot of people to think about when we talk about this is that, I have to have my IT team look at this, or I don't even have an IT team. And this sounds very intimidating, and all this work that we're gonna have to do. If you have a POS system, or for you, if you post jobs on Indeed and you need to hire, you're already using Harry or whatever, we basically we can plug into your whatever you do, because it's that simple. So for us, it's, you have a POS system, you have QuickBooks, like we just take that data, you have budgets on Excel spreadsheets, we just ingest all that data, and then we make it smart. Like our AI will interpret that data and give you information. So it's literally, if you have any way to get your sales and know what your kind of your transaction level data is, great. You have scheduling for employees, great. We just take that and we pump out information for you that's usable. But some people might be thinking, oh gosh, what does this mean? Do I have to build a whole kind of data warehouse? I'm like, no, we create the data warehouse for you because we pull it all in from these different sources. But I can see if you don't have an IT team, or you're thinking, I have no resources for this, I literally have no bandwidth to do this. Like, you don't have to, just give us your DoorDash login. Like we'll take care of it for you. And it's like, oh, it's that simple. So I think a lot of people are surprised at how little it takes to do this, because we both sit on top of your existing, what your existing operations are, and we make it easier. So hopefully people aren't too intimidated to try it out.
Amazing.
Well, That is amazing. I mean, it's funny. I've been here for like so long, and I barely even chimed in because I'm listening to two experts here go off on AI for the last half an hour. And I know we say this is fast casual, but this is not really a fast casual topic. We could be here for hours, and we can go into great depths, great intellectual depth on this. But I think we've come up on time here, and I mean, we should probably do a round 2 on this almost. I'd say. I think we got to get you back again, Dave, because this has been so informative.
Oh, yeah. Let's do a part 2.
You would do a part 2. Yeah. The real series here on AI. But I honestly, I think, just me hearing this, I think it's like just what the people thinking that this is such an enormous paradigm shift, and thus comes a tsunami of like effort that needs to come with it. I feel like you both have unveiled a lot of it is like, operational tweaks, but the value is an enormous amount of value that you can drive for businesses. I think just hearing that point there about, really like it can be done, and it's not as hard as you think it is to really get AI to stand up on your business, which I think is like a huge takeaway. I think for me, just hearing this, I was really thinking about the phrase, I don't know if you guys ever heard the phrase from advertising before, which was from madmen to mathmen. How ads become so digital. It's like, has the creativity been destroyed in marketing and advertising because of digital marketing and like data-driven analysis? And it's like, no, it has just moved the business in a new direction. And I think for me, hearing what you guys are talking about, this paradigm shift is just going to move the GM role into another new position, and it will create new unlocks and new opportunities for that role. Is how I see what is kind of what I'm taking away from you guys anyway. So you guys can quote me on that if you want. The non-expert here. But like I said, guys, I'm going to wrap it up now because, we're at time. And, like I always say, Dave, like, thank you so much for coming on, man. We really, really appreciate it. This was phenomenal. I think we're definitely going to do it again. We're definitely going to catch up for a beer as well now that I'm back in town.
Yeah.
And so thanks so much.
For having me, guys.
We're delighted. And I have a little spiel I always say at the end, where every restaurant has a story, and we're here to learn from experts like Dave, the playbooks that build the world's greatest restaurants, and how you can apply them as a founder, owner, operator, or an investor yourself. Thank you both very much, guys. And we'll see everybody next week.